Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to meet you all with one other FB live show from Digitalati. Digitalati is always proud, and we carry it very happily on our shoulders that we have been pioneers in introducing technology to the technology community. Starting from 1991, we have always been way ahead of others in bringing in technology and introducing technology. Today, we are happy to come up with yet another new technology, Angular 10. Angular 10, which was released on the 24th of April 2020 and been available from, in production environment from the 24th of June 2020, has been added to Visual Studio component with a 4th of September update on Visual Studio is the product that we are going to see today. So it's almost like hot from the pan, from the oven, that we are going to see this product. A sneak peek. We've just planned to show you a simple demo on how this Angular works. Angular in itself is a framework. Now that if you are a Java programmer or you are a .NET programmer, how significant is Angular for you is going to be my approach to tell you how important this product is. For us to know that, I have chosen today, because it's just an hour's presentation, I'm going to marry Angular with .NET framework. So that's the example or the idea of the presentation for today. But in the meanwhile, I just feel like I should introduce to you what is new in Angular, and I'm just talking about Angular 10. So what did we do in 1 to 9 editions, and why are we up here in 10, and what's new, and what do we have in it? So that makes the itinerary for the day. That's the objective of this session. Welcome to Angular 10, a sneak peek, and I promise I'm going to marry Angular and .NET Framework Core Web API. Most of the time when I meet people, when I do the present technology presentation, there is always this question about AngularJS in Angular. So it's like somebody without a surname and someone with a surname. Is this that it is the same, one and the same, or it's like the political parties having one letter before, like DMK, ADMK, MDMK? So are they one and the same? Of course not. So it's completely two different things, AngularJS and Angular. To make it very clear, to start with, they were from the same, they are born from the same umbilical cord, but they grew completely in different environments. So again, if I take the story of Mahabharata, they come from the same family, but one became Kauravas and one became Pandavas. Yeah, so something like that. So not like the destructive manner, but just to say that two different qualities, AngularJS and Angular. That's how it is. So what is AngularJS? Most of us are familiar with AngularJS because it's been there for 10 good years, and most of our application use it in our front end. So we are familiar with it. If you are not, it is the first version of Angular. This is a common feature that we should know, and it is very, very popular. So the first line, that is the family, the lineage is the same for both AngularJS and Angular. So both of them are one and the same. So AngularJS and Angular 1.0 are one and the same. So they are the same program, the first version. All right, and after that is where the division starts, and there is a difference in the treatment and difference in the idea. And in fact, if you understand the history of technology, it goes like this, that we had this when AngularJS came into the market. So let me just take a minute to talk about Angular. And so when this AngularJS came into the market, there are other competitors. It's always this, idea is money. So once an idea is out, everybody jumps into the market to copy the idea. Re-engineering is very simple. So they just copy the idea to make come up with their own product. And so did React.js, Vue, and other things came into picture. So Angular wanted to be completely different. So what is AngularJS? It's a JavaScript-based open source front end. So anything that you want to create in a front end of a web application, so something that sits on the HTML page, that's what we see with AngularJS. But as there were many competitors, Angular started to think on a different way that we want to have some complete full stack web application framework. That is why I just compared Java and .NET, that they have the full stack framework. So this is completely based on a TypeScript. So TypeScript based open source full stack web application development framework is what Angular is. So when they started, they both had the same common popular name, version, feature. So both of these, AngularJS and Angular 1.0, are one and the same, that they are there for, we use them for the front end development. But Angular 2.0 onwards, it started changing, that Angular became a framework for creating entire gamut of application, full stack application development. Technically here in AngularJS, it uses scope or controller to apply the techniques. Here it uses architectural characteristics. So architectural means we go into MVC. In MVC, we have this components, and in the components is where we are going to do all our technical arrangements, possibly. So it is basically taking us into the logical aspects of the application. And looking at AngularJS, the syntax is very, very, very simple. It's used on the HTML pages. So anything that we know in HTML, we could just go and put in AngularJS into it. And it's very simple. So it's easily adaptable. You know, someone can just quickly run through AngularJS scripts and use it inside HTML. So anyone familiar with HTML and CSS will easily be able to adapt to AngularJS. Whereas Angular, the syntax is completely different. A simple thing is that we use something like a square bracket for property binding and braces for event binding. So we call these as expression syntax. We will understand in a bit. And AngularJS uses the JavaScript, and there is nothing related to the server side. It's entirely the front end development. Whereas here, Angular, the TypeScript application, it is a full stack development. And how is it? It uses this Microsoft TypeScript. So we have all the features that we have in the object-oriented programming. So we have a class, we have constructors, we have generics, we have type, we have static typing, we have passing of value from one method to another. Everything that we do is possible here, and it is server-side programming language. So we have something called .ts. That's the key here with Angular. And AngularJS, there is no dynamic loading. It is front end, so static, whereas here for Angular, we have a dynamic loading. So it's like, I just thought 6 differences between, popularly in Tamil, we have Aru Vidyasam. So that's the same thing. Of course, the first one is not the difference. It's just the same thing. But 6 points I thought would bring a difference between AngularJS and Angular. So Angular 1 was 2010, that is the same edition of AngularJS, and it's the first version, and this really created an evolution in web application development. So it was a browser-side JavaScript with the HTML, and popularly known as AngularJS. And what happened differently is with Angular 2, which came up in 2016. So you can see that we've taken 6 long years, and that is what we see here with Angular 2. And Angular 2 has nothing common between Angular 1 other than the bunch of developers team who were with Angular 1 and Angular 2. Other than that, it is completely different. So Angular 2 to Angular 7, 8, 9, 10, if you see that, we have all these are very, very similar to each other and extensive features. So from 2 to 10, we can see all these extensive features. So this TypeScript-based full-stack development framework is called Angular. So that's the biggest difference between AngularJS and Angular. Now coming into to understand what is Angular, why Angular? When we have other framework for full-stack development, how significant is Angular? This is a cross-platform program language. So it supports multiple platforms, and also we can build different types of apps by using Angular. So you can decide your a front end. It could be device based, it could be on a web, or it could be on any other JSON, HTML, XML, whatever format that you are looking out for. We would be able to deliver this on that platform. That is the most important essence that we go for Angular. So you can have desktop applications, native, and progressive web applications too. What are the new features? So now I'm just jumping into to talk about the important features of Angular 10, new features of Angular 10. I may not do a deep dive into this. I will just be talking about few important highlights here and there, because I would take a solid 40 minutes for the presentation. So I'm just going to run through the new features and talk about the technology usage, how practically we will be able to put it into use. So the new features start from the language service. So this language service is a very, very, very important feature that we see with Angular 10. So the language service supports multiple languages in your application. So that is, again, you may come and ask, why not locale specification and locale settings with this? What is different from that? So we have this locale settings, but in the past, we were able to support only one locale that is being mapped, but this language service makes it possible to support multiple language settings here. That is number one, which is a very, very important feature with language service. So a compiler based interface has been added. That's the key which is helping us to achieve this one. And that compiler specific one does for multiple type check files. So it can check for multiple language files and it can use that thing. So it will remove HTML entities, and auto completion is being removed. So it will go read for the type check files, and then it will see the appropriate language and it will add that language to this. So this is the most important new feature here that we have, that is the language service. And then if you see the next one, we have new default browser configuration. So the old unused ones can be removed and you can set what is the new default browser configuration here. And warning about the common JS imports. So if you see in most of our application, we have all these JS imports, and sometimes these do not sit well in the framework. So this has been adopted in such a way that these next 2 points look very similar, because we see that warnings in JS import and stricter settings optional. So we can make it very tight that these are the things that would be appreciated in this framework. We can bring it like this. And TypeScript 3.9 is completely developed on 3.9. Earlier it was 3.3, to which we've moved on to 3.9. And the TS libraries support and TSL int version 6 are being used. So that means that whole bunch of new features have been pumped in. So unless and otherwise someone sits and spends time to see what are the library additions that have happened, we will not be able to easily put on. And one more thing with what will be very significant for the developers already working on Angular to move from I predominantly see people working on 6, 7, and 8 to move to 10 would be the bug fixes. Many, because you know that it's a community and it works as a community, that people contribute and people also work towards it. So this community has done a bunch of bug fixes with this Angular 10. Again, it is like a very big thing. So if you go, it will be easy for you to manage your application, that you may not have to include certain DLLs or certain other components in your application with Angular 10. So as many of the bugs have been fixed here. Right? So these are the most important new features that I took from the Angular side, the top features, and each of these feature has its own history running across, and features and properties running across for pages. So if you wish to, you may have to do a deep dive into it to understand the top new features. Now, having said that, I told you I'm just going to take you through Angular and take an Angular application, get it on the .NET framework, see how we can do it. So I'm repeating, Angular is a framework, .NET is a framework, which could be used independently to develop application. Right? And most of us are familiar with the kind of applications that one could create with the .NET framework. Now, what we are going to do is to see how Angular sits inside the framework. So, a framework inside a framework. And then from the framework, I'm just going to make a service run and access that service in the Angular application. So I have done all the initial settings, installation, prep work for my application. And all I need to do is just open my application to run and get the output here. And also the reason for choosing .NET Framework is that I'm just going to go and use some of the template files that are preloaded with the .NET application so that I could save time on creating from the scratch and working on it. So that's the most important property or feature why I have chosen this .NET Framework. I'm going to create an ASP.NET Core web application. And I have created a folder in my D drive called FB Live. So I'm going to populate my data into this folder. So this is going to be my location. And I'm going to call this as FB API. So FB API is going to be my file name, and let me just go ahead to create. So this would ask me what I would want. I want the Angular, so I'm choosing Angular here, and I'll just go ahead to create a project from that. So it may take few minutes. Even when we use the ng command, ng new command, it will take a bit of time for it to create. I'm lucky that my application is got created. I'm just going to walk you through this Solution Explorer window. If you're not familiar with Angular, it is important that you get to know these properties here. If you look at it, it will look completely different. I don't see web.config file or any other config file, but I have appsettings.json and a startup.cs. This is the important file here, program.cs. So this itself gives you an idea that I'm going to have some class-related features. So where are my application related files here, the Angular files? If I go into my client app, you can see there is something called source, and under my source you will see there is an app, that is app. Under the app I have certain number of files, and if you could see this, there is something called .ts, there is something called .ts here. These are the TypeScript files that we are going to have in here. Now always it is traditional that we run the application first to know how this is running, and then move on to understand how we are going to modify this running application. So I'm just going to run it. Again, if you're new to Visual Studio, the .NET framework with Angular, please don't worry if it fails. This npm command may take few minutes for it to start, and the starter has been set to expire in 50 seconds. So if your application fails to start for the first time in 50 seconds, it will throw an error and it will stop. So please do not worry if in case when you start for the first time it fails. Just stop that execution and hit on your F5 button one more time. It will start and it will run. Same will be the case even after your build is successful on your Visual Studio, that it opens the browser window. If the data does not load on your browser window, and again you may get this error. If there is an error, possibility is that the session expiry time has reached. So please don't worry. All you need to do is reload your page and it should be there. Hit on your F5 button one more time, it should be there. So I'm glad that I got this build failed, and I have not done anything to my application whatsoever. I'm just going to go ahead and hit on my F5 one more time to run this. So while it gets loaded, allow me to have a sip of water. So I'm glad that the error occurred so that I could tell you about that as well. It is usual, so no panic reaction. So what's happening is it's now opening on my local host. It has ported it, and if you could have seen my build window, it has started a server, and through the server you can see it is starting an ASP.NET Core, and on that it is starting an NPM, and it is uploading. So what Microsoft has done is, as traditional with Microsoft, they have given us some template files so that we don't feel disheartened. There is something to start with. So there is a home window where it is talking about some data that it has put, and then there is this counter window where there is a simple method for increment has been given. So like a child, we can just go on and click on this button and it just keeps incrementing. And then there is this thing called a weather forecast where they have populated the data. So this weather forecast is populating the data. Please have a look at this. It's starting from tomorrow, so 27th of September to 1st of October, it's going to populate the data. I'm just going to go and reload this. I'm reloading the fetch data, and you can see that the date remains the same, but the temperature and the values have changed. So it's 10C and 49F, and it's weltering, and I'm going to reload again. So you saw that first value was 10 and now it is 45 and 112, okay, and the second is 13 and 9, and I'm reloading again. This is to tell you that they're basically using some random function 138. So you could have now seen that it's using different values. So this is the thing. So I'm going to start my application. I'm going to come back here to tell you about this. So what we see here is the most important thing. We saw a counter that's coming from this one. We saw this fetch data. It's coming in from here. And then we saw this home, that is the initial page, that's coming from this location. All right, but how is this coming? There is something called index.html. So this is the first page that gets loaded, that loading thing, and this has got a map for the other files. So and there is this nav menu. This nav menu has got the navigation. So what we saw on the sidebar navigation is coming from this. So if you open any Visual Studio application, I am on Visual Studio 2019, so you will get these files. I am on a Pakka Angular application. So any Angular application you open, you will see this, but not these template files. Okay, you will see this app component.css and app component.html and .ts and app module.ts files is what you will see. Now, my most significant thing that I would like to talk about here is there is this fetch data component.ts. So this is the file that is what we saw there, which was getting the data and displaying it. Where is this getting the data? This is getting the data from something called weather forecast, but this weather forecast is an interface, as you see here. It has no information, which in turn is getting the data from something called sample data. So where is this sample data? If you look at here, I have a controller, and that controller is sample data controller. So I'm just going to click open the sample data controller. You could see that array collection, you could see here that is freezing, bracing, all those terms are here, and then there is a random method has been a call, and that is using a value and a randomly generating, and the day is current date plus they are adding values, index 1 2 3 4 5 days of values is what it's adding, and we get this one. Right, so this is a one. So what we understand is this method which says the date and time now. So from a file it is fetching the data. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this application to fetch the data from a database. So I have done that activity because I thought I will save time here. So now all I'm going to do is going to show you how my data in the database looks like, and from there I'm just going to go and access to the application. So let me open my SQL Server Object Explorer. I've used my local DB. I can put it on SQL Server. I have a servers running on my machine, but I've just chosen to do so. So you can see here, I have my local DB. In my local DB under databases, I've created a sample data. So this should match your controller's name. If you are on MVC, you will know this. So I've mapped it with that, and I have created a table, and the name of the table is matching with this one with the forecast, and I have put in the columns matching with this date formatted, temperature C and all that. And one more thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that I have already populated data as well into this so that I can show you some information in here. So I'm going to connect to local, and in a local I'm going to connect to this one. So I've been landed in master, so let me say use sample data. Yes, and click on the run button here. It gets it. So I'm just going to get you this table. What's the table name? Weather forecast. So you can see that I have populated 1/2/2020, 1/3/2020, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, completely different from the data that our current application is populating, and I have given some random values also in here. Now, keeping this aside, how am I going to convert this application? To convert this application, first of all, I need to add database entity here. So for which I'm going to do a database scaffold. I'm opening a package manager console here. So using this package manager console, I'm going to populate the data, connect the database here. So I'm going to say scaffold DB context. Okay, and when I do this, I have to give the connection string here, and I have to map Microsoft entity framework. There is a possibility to make spelling mistake, it won't run, so please be .core. So I'm just adding entity framework or .sql server. So if you do not know the name, just open your Nugget package manager on your Solution Explorer window, look at the name and copy it. And I need an output dir, output directory. I'm going to ask it to create a models directory. I have to give the connection strings, so which I'm going to do by right clicking my database, going into the properties, and getting it from here. Of course, I know it, but I'm going to just copy it from here and use it in this location so that I do not make any mistake here. So I need only the first three parameters. It is the name of the server, name of the database, and the integrated security to true. Rest is not required. And please use the double quotes to terminate this. And then oops, I have this property, I don't need it. So Microsoft.entity framework core.sql server output dir models, and hit on the enter button. If there are no spelling mistake and other things, it will install. So I get a warning, it is fantastic, it's moved into the next thing, so it has installed. If you had noticed, there was a flicker in my screen, and the flicker says that it has added something called models. And let's have a look into the models. It has populated two files here, sample data context. I'm not sure if this window is visible for you, so I'm just keeping it like this. You can see here it is sample data context.cs and weather context, weather forecast.cs. Two files have been added here. So now let me just take it back. So you would have seen it. So the models is got added here. All right. So with this, what I'm going to do here is with the models. Now, if you see the model, it has got this data. Now, I'm going to add a controller. So I could do this connection to the database by using the controller. So let me go to the controllers folder and add a controller. I'm going to add a controller with actions using entity framework, and this would ask me to choose the model and choose the constructor. So the model is in weather forecast, and the data context is in, say, a sample data, and it is going to be named as weather forecast controller. So I'm glad with that, and I'm adding it. So it is about my SQL query window. I'll close it once it is up because I don't need it anymore. So we have crossed half an hour's time, and I hope I will be able to show you the entire portion of the demo within the next half an hour's time. So I'm going to divide it into two portions. One is to fetch the data and show it here in the .NET Framework application itself, and then to open an exclusive Angular application on Visual Studio Code and connect this there and get the data there too. So all these will take a bit of time, the scaffolding, adding items and things. Do not worry if it takes time. It's working for us. So I'm adding the controller. Oh my God. Okay. Sometimes it just throws an error and we may have to close and open it. So I'm going to do the same. If it doesn't support me, I'm going to open a new project file and do that because I wouldn't want to waste your time on this. Hey, you're here, open it. So now again, I've got this. Let me go to the controller folder again and try my luck with this. Okay, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, hoping it to add it. Okay, so this is not getting it. I will open an entirely different application because all I have done is run the DB context thing, so it doesn't matter whether it is still available or not. I will just go here and get the. Oops, do you have it? No, you've lost it. Fine. I've just run my DB scaffolding command, so it shouldn't take much time for me to just go ahead and run that, so I'll get it. So let me just put this one here. My table that I've created will travel along with me. So scaffold. Where are you, connection string? Nope, I'm not getting the connection string yet. Okay, I'll just get the name of the server and I will write it because I don't want to. Data source is equal to this one. This is my data source. Then the name of the database is equal to sample data. And the next parameter is integrated security is equal to true. And let me close this. The next one is Microsoft dot entity framework core dot SQL server. And the next thing is the output directory. Output dir, that is going to be the models folder. Let me hit on enter. Oops, I have made a spelling mistake. I've written it as scaffold. So if you make a spelling mistake, it's not going to do. I have yet another spelling mistake. Database is database. So let it come back and scold and I will correct it. That's the reason I wanted to copy paste it so that there isn't any spelling mistake. Okay, I have 23 minutes and I hope. So I have to wait for it to respond and yes, build failed. So I made a spelling mistake right in here in a database. Actually, yeah, it just added the context files. So as you all know that already, I'm not talking about it here. I'm going to my controllers and add controller. Hopefully this time, fingers crossed, I get it. So yeah, that is the one and this is the one. Oh, why? So it's going to add it. Again, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. It is installing the NuGet packages for the .NET Core, MVC, Entity Framework, SQL Server, static files, and everything to support this activity. Okay, so we get it here. So we could see this, there is a sample data context, there is a controller which is using the current controller. We are yet to map a small little thing. You can see this is taking the weather forecast and the weather forecast is going to take the data. So everything is being mapped. Now what is it that we would have to do or change here is that let me just go here to my sample data context. So in my sample data context, I'm getting a warning. The warning is saying that your connection string is given here on this on configuring method, which is open. And when someone loads it, they will get to see this. It's not good to do so. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give a comment line. Then where am I going to give my connection information? I'm going to go to my startup.cs, and in the startup there is this configuration object that is already declared. Using that, I'm going to declare my configuration information. So I'm going to declare a variable str, okay, and to which I'm going to assign configuration dot this is going to be get connection string. So I'm going to get the connection string. I'm naming the connection string. You know, it is the tradition that we name it with the same name as that of our context class. So I'm using that thing. So I'm naming it. I'm yet to declare sample data. So please go with me while I do that. Now I'm creating this as a services and add that service here. So adding the service of db context in here. So which would take this sample data db context, sample data context, and now we have to give a lambda expression here, and I would suggest you also look into all those lambda expression that is from the configuration. I'm going to go and I'm going to use what is this use SQL server. So this use SQL server would ask us to give the name of our, include this one. So you can see this quick fix is asking us to do this. So I will just go ahead and add that too. And now I need to pass sample data in here. So let me put sample data here. And I will terminate it. So it has added the namespace SQL Server. If not, let me just see it. Microsoft.core.sql server. It's not there. Models is added. This is not there. So let me add it. So I have added that, and now this is there. Now I need to say what is sample data. So let me just copy the sample data, and I'm going to go to my app settings.json and add this. So whatever is the value to that, just go put a comma and start off with your value. So what I'm going to do is a connection string. So this is my connection string. So to this connections need to be given in double quotes. And okay, so to this connection string, I'm going to populate the set of values. It's one extra, so let me remove that. So what are the values that I'm going to populate here? First, it is the name, that is sample data. To the sample data, I need to give the details, that is data source is equal to the data source. I will just copy that portion of it from this command here. So this is what I want. So I'm just copying it from here, which I gave a while ago, and I'm going to use it in here. So this is my connection string. So I have given my connection string. So I have given my connection string, and I have populated a set of values here, and right, this is this one. Now, okay, so this is what I have given here. Now I just would like to see this. So here also the startup.cs, I'll just shrink my file so I could see it as fine. So this is also fine here. And one more thing is rest all is fine. So we are now going to get the data from the database and display it. So to see if it is working, I'm just going to go ahead and click on a run. So it's loading. Let me wait for that to load. So once this is done, I'm going to open API Live is getting loaded. So I just want to see if the data is coming from the table. No, it is not coming from the table. So let me just check that. I'm going to open the data.ts file. Okay, now check it. I'm waiting for the page to respond. So it is saying it is loading. To check that, let me just call API slash weather forecast. I will just use a Postman to see that the data is pushing up in here, because Postman will show me if the data is pushing up in here. So I'll copy this. So I'm going to Postman and I'm going to pass this data in here in Postman, and in Postman I'm going to say I want API slash weather forecast. And this is a get method and I will ask for it. So it says it's not able to connect. So in the meanwhile, let me just check here if I have made any mistake in the connection string, because that's what I always tend to do, sample data. Connection strings. Because we call the get connection strings method here. String, get connection string. Okay. Just rebuilding it. I'm just taking a second to check it. Okay, so one more check and I would be able to get it. So let me get this to Postman. And let me wait here. Now let me go here and I get the data. So you can see this is the data that we filled in the database. So it's not getting the data from the file. So this is the most important thing that we have seen here. Now one thing what I'm going to do is I will just put one or two more rows of data here and show you that it is getting reflected as I put in here. So I'm going to open my SQL Server, and in my SQL Server I'll just add the data. Oops. Get a table. Okay, so I'll just open. So I'm putting data into weather forecast values. So the values, the first one is the date, and I've given it in a format, right? Oh. So the rest of the things I'm not sure about what I'm going to use. So I'm just giving some random value. I'm gonna say just so I have inserted this one. Now let me just refresh here. So you can see that it's got added. So you don't have to republish your page itself. It is instantaneously, it is supported. Now I just have last 5 minutes left out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open an existing project to show the connection, because within which I will not be able to do this. So this is an existing project that I have where I have already connected the API. So if you open an Angular project in Visual Studio Code, so you can just see this. This is my project, and it looks very similar to what we saw there. So all I need to do here in this page is my app component.ts. I have added this weather forecast from there. And to tell you precisely what I have done here is I went into this one, and whatever constructor data is available here, this is the same thing that I have copied and I have pasted it here, exactly the same thing. Like what we do in the framework, here also I need to import the namespaces. So I have imported the namespaces here. And also one more thing that I have done here is that I have copied the interface here. So this is all that I have done. Additionally, one more thing is that I need to call the service here. So what I've done is I went into the environment.ts and mapped that file here. So once we do this, I can go here and call my ngserve command. Again, I made a mistake. I missed out on ngserve command. So it is not responding. I'll open CMD. So where is this folder located? So this is a project that I already have, which I'm opening now because I will not be able to get into it. So let me ask it to open ngserve. ngserve is a command to ask the server to run that we will get the localhost port. Once we get the localhost port, we will be able to use the port number that it populates. It's always the default port is 4200, which we will be able to use it in our application. So it's done, and you could see here it says localhost 4200. So I'm just going to take this localhost 4200, and this is the data that we have put in SQL Server. So I'm going to go to my Angular URL that has been published to ask for it, and I get that in here. All right, so it is as simple as that we will be able to do it. So as I mentioned, all I have done is just copy that fetch component.css based URL to this location, copied the interface to here, and imported the namespace. This is all that I need to do to get it. And now again, one more time, let me just go here to populate the data into my SQL Server to show you that let's change here, let that be 1.8 and that be minus 5, and I'm not sure, maybe it's 15, and it is very cold is what I'm inserting. Okay, so I'm inserting instantaneous publishing is what we will see here. Now I'm not going to do anything build or anything in here. Just go here to the URL and reload the data here. You can see it is populated here. I have not put any style or anything. Okay, so and again here let me go get it. It just gets the data instantaneously. It will populate the data. It's as simple as that it happens here with Angular. And that's the thing that we want today. We don't want to take some time in, uploading information and things like that. Instantaneously, we want the data to be uploaded. So that is what is the key behind Angular, and that's what we deliver here. I hope I have been able to talk to you about Angular 10, the new features, and what we have done with this application is that we've used the existing model template that is available with Microsoft, and we just moved the data. There are, it was actually getting the data from the page. Instead, we created a table and pushed the data there, and from there we have accessed it. We've accessed in Angular with the .NET Framework core application. Also, we moved into an exclusive standalone Angular application, connected that into a service, made it into a service and connected it here, and also fetched the data here. So it's very, very simply accomplished one that we see with framework. So I have not focused on the design part of it because that's not the focus. The focus is on the logical part of it. So I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I'm looking forward to connect with you in yet another FB Live program. Thank you.